Ow!
Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Alright, I'm doing a review of the movie Cloud Atlas. Alright, so this is the latest from the, well, they're no longer the Wachowski brothers. A little bit of trivia. I did not know that Larry Wachowski got a sex change operation until like 2 days ago. He's now Lana Wachowski. Even when I saw the trailer for this movie where they had the Wachowskis presenting the movie, I just thought that this was somebody who Andy Wachowski was working with. I did not know that was, emphasis on was, his brother. So that kind of blew me away. Yeah, that happened. Anyway, all things considered, I first saw this movie, first saw the trailer for this movie, and the trailer blew me away. It looked like it was going to be something that I'd never seen before. So I was really, really looking forward to going to see this movie. As an avid sci-fi person, but, well, I'll say it like this. This movie isn't just science fiction. Now, let me go ahead and rewind. What Cloud Atlas is, it's basically, I guess, a commentary, I guess, sort of on reincarnation in part. It takes place during 5 different eras. It starts off in the 1800s. It's several different story plots. There's one that takes place in the 1800s, another that takes place in the early 1930s, one that takes place in the 1970s, another that takes place in the current era, 2012, another that takes place in the year 2144, and then one that's I think is like about the 25th century in some sort of post-apocalyptic island. So it's 7 different plot lines that this movie does. And so this is a huge movie, very ambitious, also very long. It runs almost up to runs almost up to 3 hours. So we're looking at sort of almost Lord of the Rings length. I mean, not quite that long. But anyway, so this is a pretty big and ambitious movie, spanning several timelines and involving principally, actually, the interactions of really 2 primary characters. Now, they tend to switch in each scenario, in each time frame, and the movie kind of jumps back and forth from one time frame to another. One part of the movie, at one point, the movie may be in the 1970 scenario, and then jump to the 1930 scenario, and then jump to the 1800 scenario, then jump to the present day scenario, then jump to the far future post-apocalyptic scenario, and then jump back to the 2144 futuristic scenario. All of them have to do with themes of love, revolution, acts of kindness. The primary thing is actually acts of kindness that seem to reverberate throughout history, and involving characters who are, well, not so subtly hinted at as being reincarnations of the same characters. The first story frame, and before I go any further, yeah, this is it's going to be spoilers, whether or not how heavy they are. I'm not going to give away the entire plot. I'm just going to say what the movie is basically about. If you really want to go in not knowing anything, it's best to stop right now, go watch the movie, and then watch my review. So, the first story is in the 1800s and involves a guy who was doing like a contract with a landowner involving slaves, and then he ends up helping out this one slave that's trying to escape. Even though he has no real reason to gain. He's actually a lawyer, and so it's the most unlikely situation where you find somebody being, kind even to a slave who's stowing away on board a ship. So the whole scenario involves the interactions between this lawyer and this slave, and also this really shifty doctor. I don't want to give too much away with that particular storyline, but all 3 of those things really come together in a very gripping story. It really surprised me. Actually, all these stories tremendously surprised me. Loved every single one of them. The second story arc involves an aspiring music writer who attaches himself to this one other music writer who's past his prime to try to, make his way in the world and to impress this this guy that he loves. Now, yeah, warning to a lot of people: this does involve it involves a same-sex relationship. If that is highly offensive to you, you might not want to go and see the movie. But that's only that one storyline. It doesn't show anything terribly explicit except maybe one kiss. Just, kind of a little caveat there. But anyway, so that particular storyline involves the relationship between this one guy who's an aspiring music writer, and helping out this elderly guy who's who's a music writer who's past his prime, and the fallout from that happening. This guy is incredibly talented, but something happens to run him afoul of this man. I don't want to tell you once again what happens. You really need to watch the movie, but it's a very moving story, regardless of what you think of certain aspects of it. The third scenario, it takes place in the 1970s. This one was one of the better ones. It's really a sort of paranoid detective story involving a detective who's following in her father's footsteps. The detective is played by Halle Berry. The ones, by the way, before I go any further, they have some big name stars, and if you've seen any of the trailers, you got Halle Berry, you got Tom Hanks, you got Hugo Weaving, the guy who played Professor Slughorn in Harry Potter. There's a lot of people in this. The cast, the core cast, is relatively small. But I'll go into that in just a moment. But so Halle Berry, as I was saying, in the 1970s scenario, plays a detective following in her father's footsteps and starts uncovering a conspiracy involving a nuclear power plant. It really does play out like a 1970s mystery, a la Starsky and Hutch, sort of, kind of. And the next storyline takes place in the current era, involving a book editor who was probably not the best person in the world, really wasteful with his money, ends up running afoul of some thugs, and how his brother ends up getting back at him for something really stupid he did by sticking him in an old folks home. And it's basically the story of how he tries to escape from the old folks home. That one is though the premise of it is kind of dark, it's played out very, very comedically, almost like a British comedy. And I think that's what the feel they were trying to go for. The next scenario is the one that's in the year 2144, in this highly futuristic society where you have specialized human beings that are genetically engineered to run various establishments. Well, this is basically about how one particular genetically engineered being is shown the truth about the world and her existence, and how she basically sets off a rebellion. That actually is, as you watch this, it actually has some hints of this in actually the next scenario, which is that post-apocalyptic one, where you have Tom Hanks playing this goat herder who ends up meeting up with this girl from, I guess, a much more technologically advanced society, some group of people to whom all the technology was not completely lost, and be going on a journey with her to basically save the world. So that's pretty much as spoiler-free as I can make it in regards to exactly what happens. Each scenario, like I said, it's spread out through the entire movie. The movie jumps back and forth at points that are significant or maybe ironic. Weaving the entire story together, being a big story about, like we said, making your way in the world, rebellion, breaking societal norms, acts of kindness that reverberate throughout history, touching on things like reincarnation and whatnot. It's a very, very unusual movie. Something really, to be completely honest, I've never seen anything like it before. and I was highly, highly impressed. As I said, just in my touching of the various plots, these plots are played out in very unique ways. The first storyline plays out almost like if you were reading a novel from the 1800s. The second one has that sort of stoic, ornate milieu of an early 20th century novel. The 1970s one had that feel of a like I said, of a Starsky and Hutch 1970s story. I almost was waiting for the wah-wah guitar to start playing in the background with the type thing. Let me see, and of course the present day one played out, like I said, like a modern day British comedy, and the last two, the 2144 one played out like a hard cyberpunk futuristic story, almost on the vein of William Gibson, and then the final one played out like almost a pseudo sci fantasy epic. It was gorgeous. So and like all that comes together and weaves such an amazing tale that tells a powerful overarching story through multiple stories, and it blew me away. I mean, this year has had some really good movies come out. You know how at the end of the year we always had those Oscar caliber movies come out? Well, this thing is definitely an Oscar caliber movie. And now, I mean, I've seen some really good movies this year. I mean, from the Avengers, and then Batman, and now up to this. Cloud Atlas was just incredible. That's got to be seriously one of the best movies to come out this year, and I don't like trying to compare it to these other movies. I mean, Avengers was fun, and it was great fun, well written, action packed, great characterization all the way. Batman, the Dark Knight Rises was sort of the darkest hour thing with great performances all around, a really gripping storyline. Cloud Atlas was just something that surpassed even that into something that it was just so grand that it surpassed anything that I had really ever heard of. I mean, I rank this up with stuff like Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings. Star Wars tells a grand epic. Lord of the Rings the same way. This is a grand epic composed of several stories instead of just one story. And yet it's one story with each story composing a piece of the whole. It is impossible to categorize, as a matter of fact, seeing how each story, time arc in the story tells a different kind of story. From an almost Victorian epic to a piece of almost romantic literature to like I said, 1970s spy novel or a spy show, and then a British comedy, a cyberpunk epic, and an epic and a big epic, almost sci fantasy. I mean, wow. It's one part of each and yet makes up the whole. This is just something that really does not slot into any category. And that's what I absolutely loved about it. And then the performances. Holy crap. It is wow. Tom Hanks. I have not seen him this good in a very, very, very long time. And each of these characters actually plays various roles in these various time story arcs, and it's just got wonderful makeup effects that you look at them for a moment and you're like, oh my God, that's Tom Hanks, and then you look at one and you're like, is that Halle Berry? I mean, they had Halle Berry playing a white lady, okay? And just the makeup effects were just that good, and a lot of people are just going to look at that and you're like, wait a minute, that's Halle Berry. And then another one that's Hugo Weaving was so awesome. But Hugo Weaving's actually an incredibly good actor. I've seen some other things that he's been in. A lot of people just remember him best as Agent Smith in The Matrix, and then as Elrond in the Lord of the Rings. I've seen him in a couple of other things, and it shows me that, wow, this man's got some good acting chops. And it shines in this one, even though, and I know I'm giving away just a little bit, but it's like every single character he plays in this movie is either a jerk or a murderer. You know, I understand when you see it, especially where he plays a woman. that makeup job might not have quite been the best. But then again, if I were to see a person like that out on the street, I probably wouldn't have thought much. It just would have like, man, that's one ugly lady. But you know, seriously, the makeup effects to have this relatively compact cast of actors playing all these different people. Some had, some in some of these story arcs had central roles, and others were just reduced to cameo appearances. Like for instance, Tom Hanks in most of in these roles has some fairly major roles, except in a couple of them. One where he plays like this big jerkwad of a writer. Not going to tell you too much about that. And another where he I think I lost my train of thought there, but that particular part was very, very short, and so basically, you know, the acting is just wonderful. Halle Berry's performances in this are, wow. You know, I don't know what the Wachowskis did, but they got some really good acting chops out of her. My God, that was incredible. Tom Hanks, I think, may be up for another Oscar with this one, for the simple fact is, like, his best role was that one in the post-apocalyptic era. Seriously, I mean, that one was it's just magic. A little word to the wise, though. The post-apocalyptic era storyline, they speak in this sort of hackneyed English-ish language that is kind of reminiscent of have you ever seen Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome? Remember those children in the valley, how they spoke? Sounds a little bit like that. So it's not completely incomprehensible. Some people may have a more difficult time understanding it than others. I actually understood it fairly well. There were a couple of times where I had some difficulty, but I managed to get the gist of what they're saying. Let me see. Oh, and one more thing. If any of you have ever seen Inception, this follows in the vein of Inception in one respect. If you do not pay close attention throughout the entire movie, you are going to be completely lost. So I suggest you go to that movie. You might want to go to the bathroom, do whatever you got to do first, because you're not going to want to get up, because if you leave that theater and come back in for any reason whatsoever, you are going to be completely lost. Okay. And I really think that because of the movie's such huge scope and impossible to categorize, and it's just so sweeping, it's comprehensible because all the parts make the whole, which explains things very well, but it's something you could still go watch again and get a little bit more out of. But what I'm saying is that the whole deal, because this movie was so big and ambitious, unfortunately, from what I've seen, there have been a lot of movie critics who have not liked it. And it just kind of, took me aback, because I'm like, what's not to like about this? This is a lot of things all rolled into one. A synergy of so much, and yet plays it so well. I mean, it's really nothing really I can think of to say that this movie was bad in any way, form, or fashion. Solid 10 out of 10. My God, go see this movie. All you out there who watch my videos, you owe it to yourselves to see this one. This is one that really you will be hitting yourself for missing. I mean, we've had good movies this year. Like I said, I've seen, a few of them. My money situation has been kind of rocky lately, but I really wanted to see this one. So I went to go see it, and I have no regrets. That movie was awesome. And I'm not just talking about in the often misused awesome. No, awe-inspiring. So once again, Cloud Atlas, solid 10 out of 10. The plot will blow you away unless you are just completely jaded. It is hard to understand. Pay close attention. Incredible performance from every actor. Wonderful makeup effects. Beautiful visual effects and backdrops and scenery. This movie is something that I've never seen before and will probably not see again for a very, very, very long time. So, go see it. You go now. I don't care if the movie theater's closed. You wait outside the movie theater and shuck out your money for the first opening. Seriously, go see this movie. It's really great. And so that's about all I got to say about that. My next video is most likely going to be the Tron reviews that I've been promising. I'm not going to screw that up. Tron Uprising reviews, excuse me. So, or whatever happens to come my way again, who knows. Oh, and I am going to be having a big announcement, a couple of big announcements once I get some time to put it all together. So look forward to that. And so once again, everyone, thanks for watching, and comment, rate, subscribe down below. As always, keep it civil, all I ask. And so once again, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Everybody out there, stay lucky and stay blessed. See ya.